Jean Messereau, we have part two.
Part two.
Um, I actually looked. It was a year and 8 days, I think.
Okay.
July 17th was when we originally shot part one.
I was thinking of that. I was like, what? It feels like the same time. So I was like,
Yeah.
what time what day did we shoot last time?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was around we were supposed to record a couple weeks ago, but that was when we had
Oh
the
yeah.
heat.
That was a good call, man.
Yeah, no, because I mean
Yeah.
it's already hot in the studio with no AC. But I appreciate you coming on because obviously since we last spoke, you've grown a lot on social media. Your content has changed slightly, just slightly, in terms of like what you've been creating now, which I think is really awesome. And we just spoke about it a little bit, but the athletes looking at the athletic lens and how it
Mhm.
relates to psychology, or like what we can learn from the athletes in performance or after performance, or
Mhm.
like what it can teach us.
Right.
And I think that's so great just because athletes itself, like you were a coach, you played,
Mhm.
um you have so many insights from athletics, and I don't think that gets talked about enough, like in the mental health space. And it seems like more athletes are speaking up about like what they're
Mhm.
going through, or how hard it actually is to be a professional athlete or collegiate athlete or any
Right.
athlete in general, and like what those lessons that we learn in sports kind of teaches us in life.
Mhm.
And I guess I was just, what what kind of inspired that, not change in creation, but what was something that you wanted to promote? And maybe it was probably the awareness of it. Like, what was something that you wanted to kind of shed light on in those the posts that you've been creating as of recently?
Um, what inspired it, or what it continues to inspire it, is so I'll take it back to a conversation I had with another therapist who's I would say a mentor to me. And we were talking about how to, well, basically we wanted to narrow down the work that I do and how I see my work. And I was sharing with him that really what I enjoy is working with athletes, and I wanted to scale that, and I wanted to translate that in a way that is more more visible, but like in a meaningful way, in a way that not only resonates with athletes but also non-athletes. Because I think, as we were talking about before we started, that sports, there's a lot about sports that can be used to interpret and understand how we navigate life and how we understand human behavior and relationships. And so when we narrowed it down, I'm still a teacher at heart, right? I started out as an educator, and that's still where I think a lot of my skill set lies, and naturally what I gravitate to. And so when we narrowed it down in conversation, I realized that aside from, or along with, the clinical work that I do, I also wanted to make mental health palatable for the average person. A lot of these concepts can be kind of vague, or can seem to be more complex, and rightfully so. But I think if they can be translated in ways that someone who may not even be interested in mental health or even in sports, but translated in a way that that average person, or like even a kid, could understand, um, to me, that's mental health awareness and education, effective mental health and effective mental health awareness and education.
Mm-hmm.
And so, um, what better way to translate it than to use social media that everyone uses, right? And so that was the inspiration. And I started off with, I think I had maybe one or two posts about mental health awareness as it relates to athletes. And, I saw some positive responses with that, engagement with that. And from there, I jumped into the Knicks series and just used that as a way to, again, just translate what we're seeing in real time with these Knicks players, and with the championship series, with just take concepts from that can be applied to our daily lives, and just how we understand ourselves and how we navigate, just different challenges with life. And from there, worked on the World Cup
Hmm.
and covered, again, different concepts from that. So yeah, the inspiration is just making sure that uh making mental health digestible for everyone, not just athletes, not just fans, right? Like there are people uh who have told me, complete strangers who told me that, they tapped in with the series, and they're not even fans. They don't even watch soccer or basketball or any sports, but because the content was understandable and digestible and relatable. So
Hmm.
that's always the goal. It's just like, and in the classroom it was the same thing. I would just use different topics or different interests that my students had to illustrate like concepts that I wanted to teach them.
Hmm.
So it's all about like taking something that folks can find an interest in, and using that to get a message across.
Yeah, and I think it was also like just so happened that it was timely for the Knicks being
Yeah,
in
for sure, for
the
sure,
Knicks
for
being in the
sure.
championship and then the World Cup. Like,
Mm,
but there were so many things, just so many lessons about like life in general. Because I guess if we will talk about the Knicks series or just the World Cup in general,
mm,
um, I mean the Knicks weren't they were kind of favorites, but like the even just the analysts kind of wrote them off, or like Jalen Brunson couldn't
yeah,
be the 1A guy that they wanted him to be, or
right,
they said that he couldn't be the person that would lead them to the championship because
right.
also it's never been done. So like a lot of people were able to look at that and kind of make a assumption that this
Mm,
might not be the person that could do it. Obviously, you had Victor Wembanyama. Obviously the things that he's done throughout the season, just how great of a player he is, and
yeah,
just when you look at the Knicks, you don't think this is the championship team.
right,
And
right,
how their games went on wouldn't really show up until like the third quarter
right.
or the fourth quarter when
Yeah.
they made the 29-point comeback, or first three quarters wouldn't be they obviously didn't play their best brand of basketball, how they've been
Mm,
playing the whole playoffs, and then it was easy to write them off.
right.
And I think that's why it was so interesting to see you kind of break that down, because like people that have viewed basketball and played basketball, or just even just experienced life at a
Mm,
different through a different lens, like you're able to understand, well, this is really about resilience, or proving other people wrong, or proving yourself right, and proving that you were always this person that people said you could never be, and
right.
proving yourself right. And well, I know I'm this person, and I guess obviously I'm paraphrasing, so people that
Mm,
don't watch sports can be able to understand. But like when obviously people tell you certain things about yourself, and you want to be able to prove them wrong,
mm,
I think that that series was just don't but judge a book by its cover, right?
yeah,
Like
for
this
sure.
team can be able to do some great things, and obviously they went on to win the championship. But it was just like a really cool breakdown as somebody who played sports, observes sports, and watches
Mm,
it, just to be able to see you kind of break that down in real time. And it was very refreshing because I don't see many psychologists doing that. The
yeah.
people that are in the psychology field, like how can this translate to sports? And with the World Cup, Cape Verde, the goalkeeper, how he's 40 years
Mm,
old, and had the performance of his life, and changed the whole country to be
yeah.
able to the smallest country ever to make it to the knockout stages, and put up a really good fight against the champions
Right.
in Argentina. Like they came from wherever they came from in terms of just
Mm,
like club soccer, and now when people hear Cape Verde, they're like, now they know,
yeah.
they're on the map. They're People can look at this World Cup and be like, this team really did great things, and how much it changed their lives, as well as like how much they probably changed other people's lives. So it was cool to just see you break that down in real time, and like I really find that content digestible, but also
Mm,
like relatable to our own lives, and how we could be able to look at it through this lens and apply it to our own life.
yeah. No, I appreciate that. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Yeah, there's not, and I think in the sports world, while mental health is becoming a more popular topic of conversation, um, there's still there's still a lot of room for growth, and there's still a lot of room for more mental health professionals to be in the field. So I think that's still growing,
Mhm.
which is part of why we probably don't see it online as much too, because there's honestly just not as many of us in the field as there should be.
Mm-hmm.
Back to the topic of inspiration too. There's a therapist, also licensed clinical social worker, very similar. We're in the same line of work. Liz B. Croft from Philly. She's based in Philly,
Mm-hmm.
and she works with the Philly teams, or does content with them, and she also makes content about like in the scope of the Philly teams, translating like mental health to or translating sports or aspects of sports to mental health, or like highlighting the mental health layers as well. Um, and she's an inspiration too, for sure, for
Mm-hmm.
like not only the content, but also just being someone who's visible in the field and who has been having these conversations publicly too, for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of problem do you think that society is trying to solve that's creating a bigger problem in the world today?
A problem that society is trying to solve that's creating a bigger problem. That's a good question. I think to a problem that society is trying to solve that's creating a bigger problem in the world today. It brings me to the topic of AI and just technology. I think the speed of technology and how fast it's growing, and I think it's designed to solve the problem of convenience for us. But obviously, the other side of that is, the effect on the climate and the resources that we have. I think on a people level, it's the effect on uh, people being more attached to comfort, instant gratification, not really being as willing to put the work in towards their goals. And I use AI as well in my work, or just even in I wouldn't say daily, but in certain tasks that I have to do. So I'm not completely against it, but I think that over reliance on technology and convenience can be to our detriment. Um, so yeah, I think it just not only affects our climate, but also just how we function and whether or not we function effectively.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that there's people have this conversation around AI where it's like that they think it'll we I think when you look at it from like a perspective, it does solve a lot of the problems,
Mm,
but at the end of the day, it still needs a human to operate to solve those problems.
yeah.
I don't foresee or know that if we are able to master or become an expert at this thing,
Mm,
that it'll 100% just be a person, right? Because
right.
it obviously has a brain, but it doesn't have emotions. It doesn't have uh logic, or it can't be
Mm,
able to look at things objectively. It just knows like right or wrong, and there's no like real in between where I think humans are able to kind of look at a situation objectively or a problem objectively and be able to be like, well, it's kind of in the middle. There's no right or wrong, or maybe it might be this completely other thing that we didn't even consider.
right.
Um, but it 100% is a really effective tool, and I think we're just worried about it taking our jobs or how it's going to affect humanity, and not realizing like the faster we try to work on this thing, the more things could go wrong,
Mm,
right? The more in the creation of it, we might stumble upon bigger issues that we aren't really aware of, or we might really not know of. And I think people think we're closer to this AI thing than we actually really are. Like, if AI has been a thing for, it's always been a thing once you have computers, because AI is, I mean, computers are technically an artificial intelligence.
right.
You can go on Google and look up certain things, or it could take you to a website. Like, that's technically AI.
For sure.
But I think it's the thing that we believe to be like, the robots or
Mm,
putting this in a specific job where it can do everything that we're thinking about or everything that we need it to do.
Right.
And it is a fascinating subject, but I think it really leans onto the idea or the bigger problem at hand, which is like less human contact,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like if a job is able to create an occupation for this specific AI or specific robot, like humans have less time to connect or have less time to solve problems that brings us together, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
if you're trying to solve a bigger problem for either a client or a company, or you're trying to upscale your company, like the whole beautiful thing about working with another coworker is like you guys also become closer, or
Right.
advances also become more interesting, and that in itself creates human connection. And I think there's so many things nowadays where it's like we're becoming more lonely and we're becoming
Mm-hmm.
more disconnected, and we're just gonna sit and plop in AI, and now we're even creating a bigger divide and less connectivity than actually bringing more humans together.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's yeah, I don't think the AI or the technology is the issue. I think it's more of an issue of over reliance on the technology. And I think that's with any tool that we have. You know, it's kind of like when people make the argument about guns and like gun control.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Guns are a tool. I mean, they're a tool for destruction, of course, but someone has to use the tool, right? And so I think um, similarly to any technology, I think it's more about the user and how much we rely on the technology. Because yeah, like you said, AI has been here, it's going to be here, and it's going to continue to grow and develop and advance. And I think similarly to our phones, right? Like we're just very tethered to technology. And I think that's more concerning to me than the technology itself.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I'm interested in to see like what happens in the next like 20 years. Like when I'm closer to 50 years old, like what will technology be then?
Mm,
And certain movies, like I'm not really like, I mean, I'm somewhat like a conspiracy theorist, but like I Am Robot, like is that something that's
mm,
gonna, is that just like foreshadowing at that point, like what society was actually going to create in the future? Or
yeah.
is it a problem that we might not have now, or we're in the process of something like that and we're creating a bigger issue where if you like haven't seen the movie, it's just the robots end up destructing the
Mm,
world, you know what I
yeah.
mean? And like is that something that's going to happen in the future where you could be able to sit there and talk to like a actual robot and it
Mm,
feels like a human, like it kind of looks like a human and it's like
right.
acting like a human, but like it can also could be used for a tool like you said, but also used for destruction, and which
Yeah.
obviously it happened in the movie.
Right.
But it's going to be interesting to see for sure. I don't know. I do worry about that though. Like the next 20 years, 25 years, what does that look like?
Yeah. I think I agree. I do believe in predictive programming. I think that, you know, the things that we're shown through movies and shows and books serve to some of them serve to inform us of and even desensitize us to what's coming.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and some of what you mentioned is already here. You know, even with ChatGPT, there are people that a lot of people use it for emotional support and for emotional comfort or for feedback on how they should navigate like personal relationships and challenges. Unfortunately, recently there was someone who followed through with taking their own lives based on what they were told by ChatGPT. And that's not the only case. There's been a few cases like that over the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think we're already at that point. How far we go is still, you know, up for question, but I think it's important for folks to use their discretion. Definitely.
Yeah. As you are in the space, you're a therapist. You go to people that see you. You are obviously not somebody that can really psychiatry, from what I understand, is what can prescribe like medicine or
Mm.
um, be like, hey, this is something that you should take. Do you think that actually, I'll go in this. Do you think that we are, I guess, like overdiagnosing suffering that is going to inevitably happen as humans? Like, do you think that we're just like, oh, here's the you're gonna feel sad. You're gonna feel there's gonna be days where like you might not want to get out of bed, but that doesn't mean that you're depressed. Or anxiety is pretty normal in humans, where you're gonna feel nervous. You're gonna be worrying about certain things. Do you think we're kind of like we are diagnosing humans too much, or do you feel like we're realizing the problems that humans have always had,
Mm.
and we're just more aware and more cognizant of it now?
I think both. I think there's an increase on mental health awareness for sure, and we're better able to articulate what people are going through. But to the other side of that, I do think that mental health is pathologized. I do think that as far as I can't say whether or not we're overdiagnosing, because I think that depends on the practitioner, the people meeting them. Like there are a lot of, I think, factors and layers that go into that. And I would need more, I would want to know more research on
Mm-hmm.
like how much folks are overprescribed or overdiagnosed
Mm-hmm.
with mental health challenges or with medications. But I do think that it is pathologized, and sometimes even just the way that models are set up in healthcare, which is a completely which is another layered conversation
Mm-hmm.
um, in terms of healthcare, the financial aspect of it, insurance. I do think that it serves the system because of how it's set up for people to be, or for mental health to be pathologized, because there are financial aspects to every industry that we see
Yeah.
around us. But yeah, I think both things can be true. I think you can have symptoms of depression or anxiety or other mental health challenges, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're depressed or that you have anxiety or that you have a diagnosis or a condition. And so even with the folks that I work with, I try to make that as clear as possible. And so I ask them like about the symptoms that they have and how long they have these symptoms. And um, I think it's important to distinguish between the symptoms and like having a condition. And sometimes I think that gets lost in translation.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I think about it like an aspect where um it seems that people have, I guess they don't realize that you will be depressed, but that doesn't, like, you will have periods of like depression, but that doesn't mean
Mm,
that you're depressed. You know what I mean? Like, you'll
right,
have periods of anxiety, but that doesn't mean you're like an anxious person,
right.
or um I often feel like this is sometimes just the human experience and less more about like you have a deficiency, there's something wrong with you.
I agree.
And that's just the human suffering that we have to go through. But I feel like social media has kind of magnified these problems or these issues and making this person feel like they're not capable of working on them, or
Mm,
these so-called deficiencies that they have, and less about like these are actually some things that you're supposed to feel as a human. Like, these are some trials that you're supposed to go through, or these some issues that you're supposed to work through to just become an overall better person. And I know we were talking about Jubilee and the whole circle conversations that they have, but there was one I watched recently, and it was with Dr. K, and it was this one guy. He was in the military, and they basically sent him off to he was going to the military for something, but then they sent him to basically like investigate and like what is it, interrogate like really high profile like criminals or people that the military is going after. And when he got back, he felt like he was out of connection with the world. And every therapist or psychologist that he went to always told him like, here, like this is a medication you need to take, like something's wrong with you, right? Like, and obviously there might be some PTSD in there as well, which is obviously a very serious thing. But they just made it him feel like he was the problem or he was the issue. And when Dr. K sat with him, like he brought out a certain side that maybe he hasn't even seen, or he had so much trust issues with this thing that is supposed to help people, right? Like conversations or being with a therapist or psychologist, like those, they're supposed to help you. They're not supposed to prescribe you all these things and just not listen to what you're telling them. But he was so conditioned to be like, I can't trust you. Even as, you know, professional and as good as like Dr. K is in the space, like he couldn't even trust him.
Right.
And this is supposed to be a space where you're supposed to talk about it as well. And I just think it's so interesting because like people want to just, or people in that field want to just be able to prescribe you just medication, just continue to suppress instead of actually listening to what the problem is. And once they had this conversation, the whole preface of it was like, I just want to understand you, why you are the way that you are. Why do you lock yourself in a closet? Because you can't be seen from the world. You don't want to be seen from the world. Like, what is it? And obviously technology, like, you know, AI or just people in the space just want to be like, I'm just going to give you these things and you're going to go out about your day instead of actually getting to know what's going on with the human, you know? And I guess that's like the reason why I say like, are we actually over diagnosing, or are we just not understanding that there's going to be certain problems that we're going to face or certain deficiencies that we may have for a certain period of time, but that doesn't mean that we're deficient as a human, you know?
Right.
So I guess, I don't know, it was kind of interesting to just see that. And I don't know, like, is that the whole preface of it? Like, are we doing that as in that space? Like, is that something that we are overdiagnosing, or we are just, we're not really understanding that this is actually like, just because you have these issues doesn't mean that you are deficient or you have something wrong with you or you have a problem with you. Or is there actually something here that we kind of really need to foster and like kind of take care of, you know? So that was just something that was interesting to me. And I'll definitely send you that link for that, because I thought it was a really good conversation. Just people were being vulnerable in that space and just kind of sharing their issues or sharing their problems. But when you hear the issues that they've had, you kind of look at it from a different lens where it's like, I think that's just human suffering. I think that we're supposed to see people die. Like we're supposed to have periods of our life where we're going through loss or devastation, or like we're losing our identity. But that doesn't mean that like something's wrong with you. You know, you're just going through this period of life. And I just think like, I don't know, I guess that was just a question that I wanted to ask you as you see, you know, kind of people on a day-to-day basis. You worked with hundreds of people. Like, what did you feel like that issue was, you know? So I guess in that kind of like segues into the next question I wanted to be able to ask you. What do you think something, because people want to categorize trauma as like, oh, I have trauma. What do you think some people call today that's like traumatic or trauma in general that like really isn't?
I think it depends on the person. I think it's a very individualized. I think how we interpret trauma is a very individualized experience. So, for example, someone who, let's say you have a soldier or someone who grew up in a war zone, their exposure to trauma and how they interpret or understand a traumatic experience is going to be very different from someone who was never exposed to extreme violence. And so someone who was never exposed to extreme violence might look at a lighter experience, or what most would consider a lighter experience, as something traumatic. I think trauma is less about, um, and this is not to take away from anyone's experience, but I think trauma and how it affects us has a lot to do with how we interpret it and what actually happens to us. So, like, the objective event, but also the subjective part of it, which is how we interpret that experience. So, I think it differs for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
so it's hard to, yeah, I don't think I can blanket it, but yeah, I think it really comes down to those two things: what actually happened and how you interpret what happened.
Well, I guess maybe I can provide a better provide a question that isn't, maybe that is a vague question. Maybe I'll specify more. Like, what do you think people complain about, or a problem that they have, that when people come to you, what problem do most people have, and do you feel like if they solve that problem they'll be much happier? Is that more of a like a narrow question?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, see, I work with a wide spectrum of people from different backgrounds and experiences, ages, all of that. So I don't think I can generalize it to what most experience, but I do think that a lot of folks' issues come down to, at the root of them might be a lack of clarity in a lot of situations, whether it's relationships, whether it's their work experience, whether it's just issues that they're navigating personally. But I think a lot of it would be tied back to clarity. But again, that's at probably the most general level. But yeah, I really don't have like one consistent type of person that I meet with, even if folks are in the same field, whether it's like athletes or creatives, entrepreneurs, etc., students, they're still, their experiences are so individualized. It's hard to it's hard to put a blanket on it.
Mm-hmm. I guess um I guess a follow up for that would be, um we have like needs as humans, but we don't have a, I think we don't explain it well. Like, I think we don't really actually say like what the problem is, or like what we actually need in our life.
Mm,
But we kind of blanket it, we kind of blanket what our needs are
mm,
in ways that we just don't want to say. I guess like if um, a person doesn't feel understood, they will continue to over explain something that happened, or a situation, because they want to be able to feel seen or heard. Or if a person doesn't have a good time opening up, like they don't want you to just, they want to be able to tell you what their problem is, and they don't want a response from you. Like, they just want to be able to tell you, and they just want you to listen. And I think we are as humans, like, all, I don't want to say starving for something, but we all kind of um we all need something, and our needs are really unmet. What, from an observer, from your practice, from what the people that you've seen, or just society as a generalization, or just like something that you've been seeing as of late, like, what do you think people are really seeking or starving for? Like connection, like vulnerability, like what do you believe like people actually need and or want?
yeah, I would say most people are looking for connection, whether it's connection to other people or connection to the work that they do, connection to themselves, a connection to a sense of purpose. So I would say, yeah, I think connection is underneath most of what folks are looking for.
Mm-hmm. What do you think prevents us from? What do you think prevents people from actually connecting?
Distractions. We're in a time where we're heavily distracted, whether it's through technology and the internet, some of the relationships that we might have that might not be the healthiest for us. I think just survival and dealing with the economy we're in, and tending to survival needs. See, distraction plays a major role in to what I was saying about clarity earlier too. I think just like a lack of clarity. I think when we lack clarity around um, our relationships, our sense of purpose, the work that we do, the things that we want, when we lack clarity within ourselves, then we lack connection.
Mm-hmm. I also feel like to kind of add on that, I feel like we don't want people to actually see who we are. I feel like we have a wall up with other people because of trauma or because of things that we've been through in our past. And I think that's what really prevents us from creating the connection that we're looking for. I don't think that we have been taught, or we have to learn through hard experiences to actually be vulnerable with somebody else. And I think when people truly understand that connecting in a way that feels genuine, or the way that it feels when you let go of the ideology that you're going to be judged in a certain way, and just living free and not really caring about what other people may think of you, I think that will create a better connection within humans. But I think we're so conditioned because we don't want people to actually understand who we are, or we have a worry that we'll be accepted, or that we have a worry that this person won't love me, or we have a worry that of our own selves. Like, once I tell you this, then I'm going to think of myself differently, or I'm going to think of myself as weak, or I'm going to think of myself as lesser than because I'm able to share this with you. I think when people truly understand that, like, saying those things or opening up to somebody will actually relieve you, I think it'll create maybe a better experience. But I also feel like when we share certain things, we're also worried about what this person perceives of us, which I feel like also creates a deeper issue, because you should feel comfortable within your, I feel like you should, I don't know if it's like harsh, but I feel like you should feel comfortable within yourself to explain the certain things that you've been through, or opening up to another human. But because we're creating like an expectation of something in response, it's like we're kind of like fishing for a certain person to feel a way about us. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like, where you're explaining something that happened and I'm expecting something from you, instead of just like freeing yourself from your mind, if that makes sense. I just feel like that's sometimes the issue, where it's like we want to be perceived so bad by other people in this certain light, and we forget that the most important opinion, or the most important person that we should accept is ourselves. And for some reason we don't want to do that, because we are worried about how other people kind of will perceive what we tell them or what we feel, and understanding that like that's more of like a human experience than much less than worrying about other people judging you and how you are perceived, you know. So I don't know if that is something that will also create connection as well, or that's just something about like transparency and vulnerability. But I feel like that's, if we can be able to solve that issue or solve that problem. I don't know, what do you feel like in terms of that? Like what I explained, do you feel like that could be true where we drop the worry, or we drop like the ego, and like how is this other person going to perceive us when we're kind of opening up or trying to connect with another person?
Yeah, I think it largely depends on um, the environment that is created to allow a person to open up. Because everyone wears masks, right? And I don't think that that's it's not a negative thing. I think it's how we navigate through society. Um, some spaces aren't safe enough to open up, and it's not a bad thing. It's just what it is. Like there are certain things that you might share at home or with a loved one or a romantic partner or with your friends that you're not going to share at work or in a professional space. Or there's certain ways that you might show up in your personal life that might not translate well in a professional space or a public space. And so I think it's having just using discretion based on the environment that you're in, and based on the relationships that you have. Um, and Yeah, I think just having intentionality around the connections that we built. Um, it of course varies from person to person. I mean, I can speak from personal experience. There are um, I know the certain limitations I may have with different people in my life or in different spaces. And so, but I'm okay with that, right? It's like, for example, you have some friends that are your party friends. These are folks that you might go out with, have a good time with, but they may not be the people that you have like the most vulnerable, deepest conversations with. And that's okay. It's just the limitation on that connection. Other friends or other people may get that side where it's more vulnerable, it's more transparent, there's more depth to the interaction. And so, yeah, I think it's just about using discretion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think if we're completely transparent or in a vulnerable space all the time, I don't think that's helpful. It depends on the connection and also just the goals that we have. What we want for different spaces, what we want from the different relationships or the different environments that we find ourselves in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I feel like that also can. I feel like kind of what you just said in terms of like certain party friends. I feel like that people struggle with their partner being that like everything person,
Mm.
where they're which I feel like people can be that, but I feel like there's also I feel like they shouldn't they I feel like the person that you're with or your partner, I think somebody said this quote is like the person that you're with, you should be able to tell everything to, but you have the choice and the discernment to not tell them everything. Like they should be you should be comfortable enough around them to, if you have something you want to tell them, you can tell them, or something you want to go to them for, you should be able to go to them for, but that doesn't mean that they have to be. And I don't know if I feel like we have to compartmentalize our partners better, where it's like you could be able to go to them about something that you've been struggling with, but would it also be more effective to go to, let's say, a therapist to go to them with those problems? So you don't put your burdens or the issues that you're having, that they could already be they could already be struggling in other ways. And now you're going to, I don't want to say trauma dump or dumps your problems onto them, but like they could already be going through a lot. And now you are bringing issues to this relationship where you could be able to speak to somebody else about it. I don't know. I feel like that's sometimes like an issue that most partners have, where it's like they're trying to make this person into everything, where they could be able to go to them for a night out or like all of these things, right? And I feel like that's why some relationships could fail, is because they're trying to make this person like everything, like a therapist, like a financial advisor, like some like trying to find out like work advice, like all of these things, where it like creates a deeper disconnection and doesn't create a better relationship. And I feel like that's why sometimes relationships could struggle in that aspect.
Mm.
Um, has that been something that people have kind of struggled with in your line of work, where they've tried to make this person like every single thing, and not really like looking elsewhere, or asking another person, or maybe having another perspective, and like just trying to make this person like every single thing?
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
I think people, it can be difficult to balance. It can be difficult to, because I think as we get older and grow in responsibility, there's different aspects of life we have to be able to balance.
Mm-hmm.
And so it can be difficult to nurture all the aspects of our lives and of ourselves and of the relationships that we have.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in a relationship, when you have children, when you have a demanding career, it can be hard. It can be hard to find the time for friends, or find the time to just cultivate life outside of the immediate parts of it. And so the immediate parts of it are usually, in a lot of cases, work, partnership, relationship, kids, if there's a family or kids involved. And so it can be harder to find that balance, for sure.
Yeah. Why do you feel like marriage is slowly declining?
As far as what exactly, like the rate of folks getting married,
Yeah.
or
Like, do you feel like people are realizing that it's less necessary? Or do you feel like it's just declining because people are choosing to commit less?
I would need more. I would definitely need more research on it,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't want to speak from a place of generalizing it,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that it could be for multiple factors. I think one, economically, we are in a challenging time economically, and so the logistics that go into creating that level of partnership and commitment can be expensive, depending on the vision that folks may have for that level of commitment. And so I think that could play a role. I think part of it could also be a lot of as we see online, a lot of the discourse and the conversations around expectations as they relate to partnerships, marriage, raising a family, even just personal development. I think a lot of standards and expectations are shifting, and there's also a departure from traditional cultural values and expectations for the most part. But again, this is generally speaking, because of course, like, I think in the topic of relationships, it's a very personalized journey for each, couple, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think there's a shift in economic factors, cultural factors, traditions. Religion always played a major role in the institution of marriage. And, I think we're also seeing a shift in how much people are investing in religion.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that affects how much they're invested in marriage and other commitments, lifestyle commitments they might have. And so I think there's multiple factors that go into why we might see a decline in people deciding to get married, or whether or not marriages are lasting.
Yeah.
And there's also, there's a lot of factors. Social media is availability. I think we talked about this in the last conversation, availability of like options, or the illusion of options. There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah. I also feel like people probably look at like marriage as like, oh, it's like a business decision now. Like, I have to look at this in a business sense, where like people want to get prenups, may not get prenups. Like, if they don't get a prenup, obviously, like, this person can take a lot of money from you, or the things that you built. And like, people are thinking about, well, is this person really going to be with me forever? Or are they going to, they believe that it's like sunshines and rainbows now, but like when shit really starts to hit the fan, like, how are they actually going to feel? And I feel like people look at it from like a different lens of like business, than more like, this is the person I want to be with, or like the way that the government has kind of treated marriage. Like you have to sign papers and going through all of that maybe creates like a disconnect or like a reason for people not wanting to get married because of that, because they feel like it's a business idea or like a business plan, I guess, which I don't know if it creates like a deeper disconnect or creates something that kind of turns people off, or like people actually not wanting to commit for longer periods of time, or not being with the person that they actually want to be with. Like I feel like those could be some things that may stray people away from getting married. And I don't know if that's like something that comes up in the space or not, but it seems more or less like a business idea, I guess.
Yeah, I think historically there's always been an economic aspect of marriage. So I don't think that's entirely new. Um, of course, with the economy being what it is and what it's been for the last X amount of years, and just the shifts that we've seen in work and agency when it comes to work and career, I think that does affect how people are considering making that commitment. But rightfully so, I think there's always been an economic aspect to it, and I say rightfully so because it is a decision that affects your livelihood and the livelihood of, if you plan to have children, the livelihood of children as well. So I do think there's always going to be an economic aspect that is important for people to consider, for sure.
Yeah. For maybe some of the men that you have seen or currently do see, what do you feel like? What, I guess, emotional needs do you feel like men struggle to express today?
I think men struggle with expression itself, expressing, because I think needs vary by person, but just being able to express themselves, being able to articulate what they're actually feeling and going through, and being able to articulate it in a way that is effective. And when I say effective, I mean in a way that others can receive it. And it's not so much sugarcoating what they're experiencing, but being able to articulate and illustrate what their experience is. And I think a lot of men struggle with that. Either they often hold it in and just don't say anything at all, or when they do express it, it's expressed when it does reach that boiling point, and it might be expressed violently or aggressively or even passive aggressively, or in a way that is not the healthiest. And at that point, it usually does more damage to their relationships and to themselves than if they were able to express themselves more effectively, more mindfully.
So what do you feel like is the how can people be better listeners?
Similarly to what you spoke on earlier, I think listening without the intention to respond. Not to sound cliche, but actively listening, right? Like putting the phone down, making eye contact, being present, not just physically, but mentally, and showing that presence and how they show up. Checking for understanding, some things that it's something I practice in my practice is when people share their experiences with me, I check to make sure I understood it. So I'll literally say, just to make sure I understand, this is what you're saying, or this is what you're feeling. And so I think that helps with making sure that people are heard and making sure that they feel that their expressions are received.
Is there, I guess, since we spoke about men, I feel like obviously there's issues or burdens that women may have. What do you feel like those burdens are, generally speaking, that they want maybe men to understand?
Um, I would, if I were to narrow it down, I mean, I guess in speaking in the context of relationships, a lot of it ties back to communication and uh, being heard, feeling like what is expressed is also received. And I think there's just discrepancy in communication usually between, if we're speaking on dynamics between women and men. I think, um, yeah, I think effective communication is usually missing in relationships, and that leads to other problems for
Mm.
sure.
I guess we've been talking more like about everyone. I kind of want to talk about you.
Mm.
Um, has there been any thing that you've been grieving as of late?
Grieving.
Yeah. I feel like we're always constantly grieving something.
Mm.
I don't know. We're always thinking about like, um, maybe I wish I could have done this, or um, maybe it's like a family member or something.
Grieving. No, I don't think there's anything that I'm grieving. I think that I don't really get stuck in regret, because I think as long as I have, not to sound cliche, but as long as I have health, and as long as I'm here and have, the abilities I have and the resources that I have, um, I can create the outcomes, or at least a higher possibility of the outcomes that I want. So I don't really get stuck in regret or grief. And I also think that um, there's a purpose for everything, and again, not to sound cliche, but everything does happen for a reason. So yeah, I don't get too lost in regret or like the grief over what could have been, because also we just don't know. There are
Mm-hmm.
things that maybe I might have aspired to in the past that if I achieved or had at the time that I wanted it, it I wouldn't have been able to sustain it, or I might not have had the skill set or the personal development to manage it well, or to even experience it fully or enjoy it fully. So yeah, I don't get too caught on what I might have missed out on.
Mm. Yeah, maybe you weren't. It's interesting because like I think there's a lot of things like in my life that I thought I was like, I don't know, maybe ready for.
Mm.
I mean, I really wasn't,
Yeah,
until, because if I would have had it, then I probably wouldn't have like appreciated it or used it to the best of its ability.
yeah, for sure.
And then you're kind of like stuck. Like you think about, I guess something that I've been like thinking about recently, and I guess this kind of ties into it, is that before I had the podcast, I had a
Mm.
social media account on TikTok where it grew like significantly over the time of COVID, and I feel like a lot of people started to create content over
Yeah.
um, COVID, and that's kind of like how they either like coped with things or whatever. They just found something to do.
Right.
I created this account and it grew to over 200,000 followers.
Nice.
As time went on, I found the success, or I wanted the success, and I created there was a certain perception of it that when I didn't get the certain amount of views or certain amount of likes or attention on it,
Mm.
that I would get upset.
Mm.
And just recently, I actually deleted the account like completely,
Mm.
or like I unactivated it, whatever.
Mm.
I couldn't delete it because like TikTok was being annoying. It still needed, like, if I wanted to create another account, use that phone number, like I couldn't use it, so I ended up deactivating it. And I say all that to say that like at that point in time, I thought I was ready for stuff like that because I wanted to be. I still do. I still want to, as we spoke about, like I still want to be able to speak on panels. Like I still want to be a keynote speaker. Like those are all aspirations that I still have. And at that time, I thought I was ready for it.
Yeah.
I thought I was ready for that type of like attention or success, but I wasn't.
Right.
And then it created like an overall perception that I wasn't happy with.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, when I deleted it, I asked myself, like, why do I feel about a way for this account? And I guess the conclusion that I came to is that a lot of the things that I was promoting on it, or just the perception of like, oh, if this video doesn't do well, like I want to be able to start fresh. Like I don't want to be able to, I don't want to have to worry about like, is this video going to do as many views or get as many likes as the next video?
Right.
Um, and I guess that was just a circumstance where I thought I was ready for that. Like I thought I was ready to have the attention that I thought. And that was like 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And I ended up like, I wasn't ready for it. So I had to start new. I had to start fresh. And yeah, I think sometimes when you ask for certain things from like, when you ask God for certain things, like he'll give them to you. But it may not be in the way that you think, or it may give you the certain resources or scenarios or success that you're like seeking. But sometimes you might perceive it a different way,
Right.
where you thought it was going to fix something, where you thought it was going to bring a certain level of contentment in your life, or you thought it was going to bring you happiness, and it actually didn't. It brought you further from that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's interesting that sometimes we think that certain things will make us feel fulfilled or feel happy when they don't create the happiness that we're seeking.
Right.
And I guess it kind of like creates this idea of like what a meaningful life is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you feel like creates a meaningful life?
For myself.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I think not to get too philosophical, but I think a meaningful life depends on the meaning that we make of it. And what I mean by that is, like, I can say like, yeah, what makes a meaningful life for me is financial freedom, raising my son well, having great relationship, great connections, community, all the kind of like the list of things that, we're told is what makes a meaningful life. But life also has its twists and turns, and it may not pan out the way we want it to, or we may end up in predicaments that we might not want to be in, whether that's related to health, whether it's related to finances. We talked about marriages earlier, whether relationships don't work out, whether whatever predicament life might throw at us. And so when we do face these circumstances or predicaments, does that take away the meaning? Right? Like if I'm in a predicament where, let's say, God forbid, but my health is compromised, or relationship compromised, or relationship with my son compromised, or finances compromised, does that mean that my life is no longer meaningful? Right? And so I think like it really comes down to the meaning that we make of it in the moment. Something that I used to, I would say passively study as a kid, to be honest. But even into adulthood, so one of the books I read, I want to say in like maybe 8th grade or 7th grade, something like that. No, 6th grade. I forget the exact title of the book, but it was a book on the life of Tukey Williams, who was on like death row. And I think it was his autobiography, I want to say. I think he wrote it himself. And basically it was a book about his life, how he ended up where he was, and essentially what he finds meaning in, right? Like he wanted to influence young people to go in the right direction and not make the mistakes he did. And that's why he wrote the book. And that was where he found his sense of purpose or his sense of meaning. And, that's something that obviously resonated with me. I mean, this was 6th grade, but to this conversation, looking at the lives of people who are in predicaments, similar predicaments, or people who, just different lives where circumstances are not ideal. I think how we make meaning is really how we choose to, and not so much on like the circumstance itself or the the external factors, but really what we see in the experiences that life gives us.
Mm-hmm. You spoke about your son a little bit, and I kind of had a certain thought about fatherhood.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of just like, I think of my own, personal relationship, like with my father, and I think the the type of relationship that I want to have with my son or daughter.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know if you're like, maybe you don't ever know, but what gives you like the reassurance that lets you know that you're doing a good job as being a parent?
It's a good question. I think what gives me the reassurance is you'll be able to tell from your kids. I think for me, it's seeing how my son reacts to me, his natural reactions, right? Like when I walk in the door, um, how like yesterday, for example, I was getting ready to go out, and he's literally following me from room to room, to the point where it was like, all right, man, like I, I I'm I turn around and I'm almost stepping on you because you're like right there, right? And so I think that to me is reassuring, because if a child doesn't if a child doesn't feel comfortable to be themselves around you, and they don't feel a strong connection, I think that will show as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I think the reassurance comes from um your child, your children, and how they view you, how they respond to you, how they interact with you.
Mm-hmm. Certain things, I guess I've gone as I've been getting older. Um, there have been, I don't want to say ideologies, but or perceptions that
Mm,
my parents have created for me.
mm,
But I feel like sometimes they kind of like put their beliefs into me or like onto me.
mm,
And as I now have like discernment, as I have a level of understanding or just logic or just like my own way of thinking, I feel like parents may be getting I don't want to say offended, but like they know you to be this person. Now you're a completely different person.
right.
And I feel like sometimes they shed beliefs onto their children. How have you been able to kind of manage like your own beliefs and your own ideologies, your own experiences,
Mm,
so that doesn't like your child is able to kind of think for themselves?
mm. It's something I'm still working on. And I think because my son is so young, there's he's kind of a sponge right now, right? So I think his personality is still setting in, and it's starting to show more. But I think when it comes to like his belief system and really questioning things, and ideologies, and him really deciding who he wants to be, I think that's still a road that we'll cross further down the line. But I also think that my values and what I'm teaching him and aiming to teach him are beneficial for him. And I'm more of a my leadership style is more through action. And I think that kids learn more from what they observe you doing more than what you say. And so my focus is more on just making sure that I'm who I need to be and I'm the right example. And my hope is that he learns from that more than any lecture I could give him or anything I try to instill through teaching. I think both are important, but while he's so young, I'm using this time to develop myself as much as possible, so that he's not only seeing an example now, but as he gets older and starts to make more sense of things, he can internalize what he's seeing.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think there are. I guess this is biased, but I don't really think there are beliefs or values that I have that would be detrimental to him. So I don't really come to a clash in terms of like uh avoiding instilling certain things.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I guess something that I've also experienced like growing up is or had to like really decipher for my own is like understanding like what love is,
Mm-hmm.
and through a um obviously if you're able to see a good one from a child within your relationships, I feel like you can or cannot create better decisions when you're older to make relationship decisions that are going to benefit your life.
Mm.
What is something that you wanted that you are actively trying to teach your son, or maybe a conversation that you will have when he gets older? Like, what do you want to teach your son about love?
About love.
Obviously, you could teach him through your own
Mm.
love within your dynamic, but like
Yeah.
when he's ready to find a partner, like what do you hope that he's able to understand so he creates a better decision for that, or creates a his own decision that would benefit him and maybe his kids or his children if he chooses to have some.
Mm. It's interesting. It's an interesting question. I'm not sure. I actually had this had this conversation, some similar conversation, somewhere recently. I don't think I would. Uh, I think if my son asked me about love, I'd be. That's a conversation I'd be willing to have. Of course, if he asked me about anything, I don't think it would be a priority for me to initiate a conversation specifically about love itself, like the emotion or the feeling of love, because I think it's so. I don't know. I think we kind of put, or actually, let me backtrack a little bit or rewind a little bit. I would put more of an emphasis on him navigating relationships in ways that are healthy, because I think love can get lost in translation a lot, right? Like there are people who are abusive towards each other who say they love each other. So I don't think the conversation would be so much about the feeling of love, but more so about how to navigate his relationships in healthy ways and how to have healthy dynamics and how to operate from purpose in everything that he does, including his relationships. Because I think, especially, I mean, I assume those conversations will probably surface when he's a young, maybe adolescent, teenager, young adult. And I think purpose, healthy dynamics, respect is more important. Um, Making sure that his relationships are a good use of his time. I think that's more important than whether or not more important than the feeling of love, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and not so much that relationships have to be like this productive, like work focused experience. It's not that. It's just making sure that, again, he's in, if he finds himself in relationships or is interested in that, that the dynamics are healthy, that there's respect, that there's honesty, that there's, trust and transparency, and that the influence is positive. That's what I mean by purposeful, that like there's a positive influence there and that it's conducive to the man he wants to be and where he wants to go. Because I think love can be deceiving, right? And, people can fall in love, but that love or that relationship may not be conducive to the person that they want to become or where they want to go in life. And I would do him a disservice if I didn't frame it that way and just focused on the love itself. I think that's how time and energy and money can be wasted.
You feel like that's like what people confuse about love?
What specifically?
That or maybe that's what they get it wrong. Like, do you feel like um people confuse like the intentionality and like the purpose for it? Like, do you think that they look at it, they look at love for like a different, not a different meaning, but like, do you think that they confuse love about like the feelings, like what it makes you feel, like the emotions that you get from it, and more or less like a logical decision, like this is a good person for me, I know this person is going to raise my child to be a good person. Like, do you feel like that's what they confuse about it?
I think it gets lost in translation for sure. I think that the feelings, it's a dopamine hit, right? And so I think the feelings of, companionship, having a person to fulfill certain emotional needs or certain emotional voids, I think that can blind people to the direction that they might be going in their relationships, and whether or not their relationships are serving them and the other person that, or other people that are involved.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that's what I was saying earlier about clarity as well. I think if we have clarity in a lot of the things that we're doing, then that can help us avoid some of the pitfalls that we see people find themselves in.
How can we create better clarity?
Sitting with ourselves, being more present with ourselves and more honest with ourselves. Just identifying what we want. Like, on the same topic, as you said, if the goal is to connect with and build with someone who would be a great parent, someone who you're compatible with and who you enjoy living with or could enjoy living with, someone who is resourceful or nurturing or who can help push you towards your goals, fill in the blank, whatever the list is, then you can meet someone who you may have great chemistry with, but maybe that person is showing signs that they don't fit into those standards that you have. But the feeling of, okay, I have great chemistry with this person. There's romance there. They're attractive. There's a good vibe, if you will. That can blind us to the missing pieces. And of course, no one's perfect, right? So it's, the chances of you just meeting someone who's going to check all the boxes are, I don't want to say slim to none because it is a possibility, but usually might not be the case, right? But if we have clarity around what we want and also what we're willing to compromise or allow a person to work on or work with that person on those things, then I think it just helps us to avoid a lot of what we don't want.
Yeah, I think that people do confuse the chemistry with like the compatibility for like actual connection.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that we think about all these things that I think it was it was actually my last guest, second to last guest, it was his name was Johnny, that people confuse like good sex for like a good person, or like they confuse like good sexual chemistry with, oh, this person actually might not really be good for me.
Yeah, chemistry versus compatibility.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I feel like when we choose, that's why maybe that is like one of the reasons why like people get divorced, is because they choose that chemistry over like, is this person actually a good person? Like, is this person somebody that's going to motivate me or inspire me to go after the things that I want in this life? Are they going to nurture me?
Right.
Are they going to nurture the future like children that I want? Like, are they going to nurture me for me to be a better husband or a better father? Like, are they going to actively do those things?
Right.
And I feel like that's where we kind of sometimes get it lost in translation too. Like, we're just searching for these things rather than actually asking ourselves, or just kind of like you said, sitting with ourselves to really come to a concluded answer that no or yes, this person is going to be good for me. And maybe like we create excuses for why they are or why they are not. And then I feel like that's sometimes maybe why like people sabotage their own relationships, because like, oh, this person didn't bring me a certain feeling or a certain experience that I thought was going to happen, but they're actually a good person. But because those feelings or trauma that you've already experienced in the past, like that's what you believe really makes love or makes a relationship. But that's where your kind of like emotional cognizance kind of like comes into a play, where it's like, yeah, that's actually not really a good relationship model, a good partner that would help me invest into like our future and like my future in itself.
Yeah, for sure. I think a couple of phrases that you use I think are important to avoid conflating as well is a person can be a good person or a good partner, but they might not be a good person or a good partner for you. Right. And I think there's the difference in that I think is overlooked. And maybe it's because some people may not be used to meeting or knowing good people. Because I think that's a common complaint in the dating world, not only that we see online, but even in folks that I work with as well. So when people do meet a quote unquote good person or a seemingly good person, there's the assumption that, this is the person for them. But again, if we go back to the clarity question on like what you actually want, then I think that can erase the confusion.
Something that I don't know, I guess I would love to know your perspective on this, or maybe this would be like a therapeutic question that I would ask you. I posted, as you saw, my mom's birthday and and her dancing and her
Mom's is lit.
and I went to go see my dad the other day, and when I saw both of them last, they've changed significantly in terms of just like getting older and aging. And I think you expect like, I had a grandmother, but like she passed when I was like 10. So like I never really had that relationship or just understanding of like death in general.
Yeah.
And when I went to go see him, my dad and like my mom, for context, they no longer like they're divorced, like they're not together. So they're obviously living two different lives. But when I went to go see my dad, he's like, his health is like declining in ways where like he feels like he has like osteoporosis, or like he has like maybe early onset of like Parkinson's, because like he shakes a lot.
Gotcha.
And my mom, obviously, she's very she doesn't have any of those issues, but you can still see like her health is good, but obviously as you get older, certain things happen.
Right.
The mobility, her not being able to maybe walk a certain way, or getting up the stairs seems to be a hard task for her now.
Gotcha.
But I struggle with the issue of like, I don't know, I struggle with the issue of death, like people around me. And I feel like that's going to be something that's like going to hit me really hard.
Yeah.
Rightfully so. But I think you aren't taught or learned how to process somebody aging, because you see them at one point in your life. Like my parents weren't like the marathon runners, like, oh, softball on Sundays, you know what I mean? Like they were obviously very limited in their like interactions with athletic movement or just movement in general. So as you see them get older, your understanding of it kind of like, damn, they really are getting older.
Right.
To anybody who's listening, or maybe for even like myself, how can I process them getting older and then eventually like passing away? Like, how can I get a better understanding with that now before it actually happens?
That's a good question. Um, I don't think there's a I don't think there's a right or wrong way to navigate it, and I want to name that because grief and just the process of, especially with our parents, I think how we look at them, the process of our perception of them changing over the years, and then us processing their passing, or having that in the back of our minds, or maybe in the front of our minds, top of mind, that's going to be a reality. I don't think it's a right or wrong way to look at it, or mentally navigate it. Um, I think there are a couple of things that come to mind. One is acceptance of it, acceptance of the mortality of our parents and of ourselves. And I think tied to that acceptance is the meaning that we make of that reality. What we were talking about before, right? Like how we look at life in terms of how we make meaning for ourselves. Like you asked, what is a meaningful life? I think also asking, or also how we make meaning of our parents aging, and of just the reality of their lives and their limitations, is going to matter to how we're able to accept what we're seeing. I think part of that acceptance is also taking advantage of the time that we do have with them, the moments that we have, being more present, creating and salvaging more memories. Not that it makes the process easier, but I think it helps with the meaning that we make of those relationships, and how we cope with the reality that they have limitations with their time, with their health. How we show up for them, in the limited time that's available. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't think there's a clear cut way to navigate it. But I think a large part of that is the acceptance, the meaning, and the presence that we have
Mm-hmm.
with them.
Yeah, because it's whenever I was like trying to help my dad, it would seem like it was a struggle for him to like, how he quoted was, give up his independence.
Mm.
Like there's certain things that he can't do anymore,
Yeah.
and he feels like if he gives up those things, like he'll give up his own independence, which
Mm.
obviously is a tough thing to swallow, because it's like you're not able to do the certain things that you were once able to do.
Right.
And that seems to be a big struggle for him. So it's like also a big struggle for me to try to help him
Yeah.
in those tasks, because it's like he's being stubborn and not like understand, like there's nothing wrong with you not being able to do it anymore. And I
Yeah.
feel like, I don't know if that's his own like processing of like masculinity, like he doesn't want to
Mm.
ask for help, or he doesn't want to be seen as weak, and it seems like it's conflicting with his own identity of that,
Yeah.
where he's not able to like give me certain delegations or allow me to do certain things because he wants to do it.
Right.
And I can imagine that like it's also a struggle, or a hard thing for him to accept that he's aging,
Mm.
or like maybe he's realizing that his mortality is like, could be at some point. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I think that's also a struggle that he has, and
Mm.
I don't know how to like navigate that issue as well, because like when a person realizes that they're limited, or that
Mm.
their mortality is real, then you don't know how to show up for them in those aspects as well. And it's hard for me because I don't know how to show up for him,
Right.
because he understands that there are certain things that he can't do anymore.
Mm.
And I don't know how to like, I don't know. It's hard because I don't want to argue with him,
Right.
because it's like, I mean, I understand like you're aging and you can't do certain things, and I don't know how to navigate helping or aiding with that.
Mm. I think it's important to lean towards affirming in this space or this season. And again, there's no black or white. black and white way to navigate it. But I do think that there's multiple factors at play. So like you said, there's the lack of agency that's felt on his side and on your side too, because you're witnessing it, you're seeing it, you're a part of it. There's also the shift in dynamic. You go from your parents parenting you to you parenting them. You saw your parents as a child, adolescent, teenager, young adult, and they may have had this authority presence, this all-powerful presence of your parents. So you're going to see them in a certain light that you don't see anyone else. Now you're seeing the humanity of them, beyond them as mom and dad. And so there are parts of, you're seeing the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? There are parts of that you haven't seen before. Parts of that they might even still currently might try to shield you from, or might try to avoid showing you. There's certain vulnerabilities that they might try to avoid showing you. And so that's what brings me back to the affirming piece. I think being supportive where you see fit, but also where they ask for it, also where it's necessary. Sometimes it does mean taking that step back. And even if you know that there are ways that you could support that might make the process smoother for them, or that, maybe you have an answer to something that might take them a little bit longer to come around to. Sometimes taking that step back and just affirming their autonomy, affirming their agency, because like in your dad's case, what you're describing, or how I'm understanding what you're describing, is that, he's feeling that slip, and that may come with an uncomfortable level of vulnerability. And so the affirming part is allowing him to practice his agency and encouraging that. And of course, I mean, if there are parts of that agency that could be detrimental to him, stepping in and supporting where you see fit. But yeah, just allowing him to practice it as much as possible, because it's difficult. And both of you are dealing with an experience that you've never dealt with before. He's never been at this age before. He's never had these kinds of experiences with his health before. So it's all new to him, and it's all new to you as an observer and as someone who's next to him.
Yeah. No, it's also taught me some patience. Like, it's also to be more, be more delicate, just be more aware, be more present. Because you start to feel like the time you have is finite. Like, you start to really feel like, I think that's also a good thing about like aging, or like, I don't know, maybe death. Like, you realize that like this moment doesn't last forever. You won't be this person forever. You won't be this age forever.
Right.
You won't be able to have this moment back. Like, it's also a good lesson to be like, use the most of your time, or use the most of the relationships that you've already built. Don't take any moment for granted. Like, if there's something that you want to go out and do, go out and do it.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the fucking expectations that you're going to have from yourself, from other people, or even if you want to create something that might not be good, or you might not be successful at it, like, just go do it.
Right.
And that's kind of also like something that's been in the back of my mind, or something that I learned like through seeing both of them, is really appreciating and taking advantage of that moment.
Yeah.
And taking advantage of your time and not wasting it, or not using it on things that wouldn't benefit you, or using it on things that you'd look back and be like, damn, I'm really happy I did that. Or like, I said I was going to do it and I actually did it,
right.
And it just kind of makes you understand and realize, like, as cliche as it is, like, life is really precious. Like, life is really a gift. It's
right.
We are living in the present,
know? Right.
And I feel like you don't really understand that, or really realize that, until it actually happens.
That's the acceptance piece too.
Yeah.
Because I think if we accept that, if we accept our immortality, then it makes the present resonate with us more, and it gives us more of an urgency to live in the present.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think a lot of us try to avoid the topic of immortality because it's uncomfortable and because there's so much that is unknown about immortality and what comes after. And so we try to avoid that, but I think that also causes us to procrastinate with the present and with real life.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if we can accept that and we know that, okay, I don't know when there is this cutoff, but there is a cutoff coming, then we can see more possibility and opportunity with the present.
Yeah. As I know, like therapists need therapy.
Mm.
What's a thought or a conversation that you've wanted to have that you've wanted to talk about or you wanted to share that you haven't been able to?
In therapy?
Maybe in therapy, maybe just in life, something that's been coming up for you.
A conversation.
Because this, as the whole percent or the whole 1% podcast is like
Yeah.
started to evolve,
Right.
and now it's like more or less creating the 1% of conversations that either people do or do not have.
Mm.
And I guess for you, there's been probably been things that have came up or things that you maybe expressed or maybe things that you wanted to dive deeper on.
Yeah.
What are those things for you?
I think this is a conversation that I have had in different spaces, but I think it's going to be relevant for a while. I look at like the timing of life in like decades, and there are certain windows for what I call like, let me backtrack, what we call windows of opportunity, or what I call like windows of execution. And it's not that we can't execute on certain goals or certain aspects of life in later times of our lives or in other decades of our lives. But I do think that similarly to what you kind of touched on in this conversation as well, like this is the oldest we've ever been and the youngest we'll ever be, right? And so making the most of the time that we have, the present moment, like literally the present right now, but also the timing of our lives and the seasons of our lives and, you know, the decades of our lives. And being in my 30s, I think I view it as a prime season or a prime decade of life, because in your 30s you have wisdom from experience and from your relationships and things you might have studied. You have developed more resources to get closer to goals that you might have. Your relationships are more seasoned, so you have more time in them and more experience and just deeper connection. And so you've had enough time to develop your life to a certain level. And I don't know too many people who are older than me, significantly older, like in higher decades, who have navigated this decade of their lives well and who have sustained their success into the decades that they're in, whether that's 40s or 50s or 60s, etc. And so the conversation that to answer your question, the conversation that I want to have, and that preferably with folks who have made it to those higher decades and who have sustained themselves and their success to those decades, is really just how to do it. You know, how to make the most of this prime decade because I do think this decade is also a foundational one. I think the decisions that are made now kind of set the framework for how those future decades pan out. And also too, it's also harder to have the it's not impossible, but it's difficult to have the energy and to have the sharpness in those later decades. And so like the decisions that are made now are really critical. And so yeah, that's the conversation I would want to have with preferably older people who've survived this decade, is how to sustain it in every way: relationship, career, parenthood, friendships, how to sustain a well-balanced life throughout the decades, longevity.
Have you been able to find people that have been able to answer some of those questions?
It's a good question. To an extent, I have I've met people who on the surface seem to have sustained. I think it's more a matter of developing depth with those connections to really learn beyond the surface how they've sustained, if they've sustained. But there are people that I've met along the way who I've taken bits and pieces from, and that's something that Nipsey Hussle actually spoke on this. He said, not this conversation specifically, but the topic of like stealing information from people. So like, I'm an observer, so you don't have to tell me how to do everything. You actually don't have to tell me. You could gatekeep as much as you want. I'm going to watch and observe and put two and two together. And so there are people that I learn from directly and indirectly, who've helped me directly and indirectly to navigate. But yeah, I think it's more so a matter of developing depth with those relationships and really getting further into those topics.
Yeah, I think also like you kind of touched on it, but it does seem very difficult to create new friendships as you get older. And I guess you through I think we'd spoken about it, but it was a different where like after school, after graduation depression.
Yeah.
Where it's like you're trying to figure out life, whatever. You might have it figured out in some aspects, other aspects maybe not.
Right.
But I think one thing that you're trying to figure out is how to navigate new friendships.
Mm-hmm.
And you still could have old ones, but I think if you want to gain a new perspective or gain a new understanding about something, or maybe hone in on something that somebody else has knowledge on, or just being, that these people are in rooms that you're trying to get in, not in a transactional way, but more or less like in a way that you guys can both come together with ideas or inspiration or just create that meaningful connection. And that's been like a huge like struggle for me, is like knowing what friendships that I find or create on social media are actually genuine, and not seeing it as like this transactional thing. That's been something that's like been a big struggle for me. And obviously, as your social media has grown, like maybe that's been something a struggle for you as well. Because you think in the moment that you're creating genuine friendships on your end.
Yeah.
Because that's who you just might be. Like you might just be a genuine person. But the other part of it is the other person might not be as genuine as you think. Even though you share spaces, or even though I guess just like people that I've had on the podcast that I thought we could create a genuine connection with or a genuine friendship with. And that isn't the case.
Yeah.
And what's weird, or not what's weird, what I'm confused about is that, especially when you're in a space like this, where you're being vulnerable, you're having the conversations, you think that after something that maybe you've shared or another person shared, that would harvest a genuine friendship, and it doesn't.
Right.
And that's just like, even outside of that, you also struggle with like just maintaining that or making new ones, because it's not so much or less that you're worried about you, but you're worried about, does this other person want to have this same friendship or create this like relationship where you could go to them about, like, if I needed to phone a buddy that I've created, like, can I call you up? Like, let's meet up or whatever, you
Right.
know. Um, that seems to be my struggle as well. So I don't know if that
Mm,
also correlates into the struggle that you're having as well, where that seems to be an issue too.
mm. I think it's interesting. Um, I don't know if I would. I don't know if I'd say it's a struggle. I think the struggle is more so time. Not so much. Yeah, not so much in the struggle for me doesn't necessarily lie in finding genuine people. I think it's more so the time to go deep with friendships and deep with connections or potential connections because of work duties, because of parenthood, relations. There's so many uh, aspects of life that are being juggled. It can be hard to find the time to really develop deeper connections. But I do think that even if we look at the school model and how school and how work can create an environment for friendships to form, I think in those environments it's easier because for the most part, the people in those environments are aligned on something. So if you're a student, you connect with that person in your class or that person in lunch because you guys are following the same schedule. You're essentially working towards the same goals. You're in the same classes. So there's a lot of alignment in your life. And even with work friends, you're in the same place every day. So whether you like being there or not, there's still alignment in your life, um, the system of your life. And so I think the opportunity to develop deeper connections, I think, comes from alignment largely in terms of the systems that we're in or what we're working towards. And so, as you said, it doesn't necessarily have to be transactional, but I do think that when there's similarity in terms of what people are working towards or working on, and there's alignment there, then I think the friendships are more likely to form because it also opens the door for consistency. Because if we know that, okay, well, again, with school or with a job, we're working towards this thing every day, then we're connecting every day. As opposed to if we're going in different directions with what we're doing, now we have to make it's not impossible, but now we have to make more of an effort to connect because we're both on these separate paths. Now we both have to kind of take a step out of these paths to connect. Um, and I think I don't view it as a negative thing. I think it's just what comes with developing those connections um, in adult life, right? When we essentially have to create the systems ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense for sure, because you're also trying to manage everything else out of your life as well, your job,
Mm-hmm.
relationships, like.
And that's why, honestly, I don't take a lot of things personal because I understand that everyone is trying to figure it out for themselves. And so even those people who are transactional in how they operate, I understand that you're transactional because you need something.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you maybe you might not go about it in the best way, but I charge it to the mind, not the heart. It's just like, you're and those boundaries come with that, right? If I know that, okay, this person, every time they reach out, it's because they want something and it's one-sided, then that's where the boundaries come in. And that's where like we were talking about earlier, like party friends, right? You have certain people who serve different purposes, and it's important to know which category to place them in. Some people you just may not be able to get that depth from because they might be more transactional, or they might be operating from a certain space. And that's okay. It's just, you know, that, okay, well, this person, if there's a certain project that I need to work on and I might need their help with, or I might need to collaborate with them, I know that that's the person for that. And that's as far as I can go with them.
Yeah.
But this other person who, let's say, they're also in the pod space, and, you know, every time we connect, we're building on ideas, and we're able to even build something together. That may be a person that you might be able to go deeper with because there's more alignment there.
Yeah. I guess I also have that issue of like taking things personally sometimes. I don't know if it's just like I don't want to say empathy thing or just whatever, but I don't know if it's a space of like wanting those certain friendships.
Mm-hmm.
But I do struggle with like taking it personally. I don't know why. I guess maybe I expect like maybe there's also probably like a hidden expectation, like I do it because I genuinely want to be like friends, or I genuinely want to like create a connection. And maybe if it is a transactional thing, or it is a thing where you aren't coming from a genuine place, like I think I take that personally because like I wanted to be genuine with you, and that's not what you wanted.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, something that I struggle with as well. And I know probably a lot of other people struggle with that too.
Mm-hmm.
In that same regard of like you wanting to have those conversations, does like getting older, does that like worry you? Do you think about that like a lot, like getting older or like death?
It's not something I think about a lot, to be honest. I just want good health. You know, that's the main. I think aging, I'm not gonna say it only sucks, but I think primarily, I think the issues are not so much with aging, but what can come with aging, right? So like, if you're aging and you have struggles with your health, then that's gonna make the aging experience, the lived experience, a lot harder. I mean, health challenges are gonna make it harder regardless of your age. So I don't think too much about death or aging. It's they're factors of life that I just accept as being realities. And yeah, I think I'm just more so in the presence of things and making sure that the decisions that I make today can make the aging process as smooth as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so like taking care of my health and, you know, just being mindful about that, so that God willing, when I do reach higher ages, I'm not struggling.
That's the last question I have for you. I've asked this question a lot recently. Some people I feel like have been honest about it. Some people haven't. It's pretty actually a really simple question, but it's not asked often.
Okay.
How are you?
Like now, like how I feel.
Yeah. How are you? Just how are you?
See, the automatic response is I'm good, right?
Yeah.
So I'm trying.
And I understand that like that comes with like when I ask that question, it's out of genuine curiosity. Like that might be a question that people need, you know. But I think I've been asking it a lot where I'm able to like decipher. I don't know. There might be something there, like, but they just don't want to speak about it, and that's not something that they want to get into, which is completely fine. But I think it's disingenuous as well. And you might actually be fine. Like that might genuinely be the answer.
Yeah.
But I look for more than just like I'm good. So I guess that's my like question. That's my last question to you. Is like, how are you? And it might not be that deep.
Yeah, I think I'm good, man. And I don't want to say that, you know, I don't want to oversimplify, but well, actually, no, I won't simplify at all. I think I say I'm good because I'm in a space where I'm more aligned. And back to the clarity question, I'm more aligned with what I want. And it's not so much about having everything that I want, but more so being on the path, being on the trajectory, um, you know, being more of myself, if that makes sense. And not that I wasn't being myself before, but it's more so like just walking in alignment with like what I value. Expressing myself more, creating more, doing things that are more in line with what I enjoy, what I believe in. Like yesterday, for example, I took my son and my lady to the beach, and I was very content. It's a Saturday evening, and it could be anywhere. I'm like, I actually just wanted to go to the beach and like walk in the sand without shoes on, and I didn't even get in the water. It was kind of cold actually, but I just wanted to listen to the waves, and just be in a relaxed environment. And so, yeah, and I didn't like, I know I've been creating more content, but I don't feel the push to, you know, post a lot or post like my personal life. I've never been that kind of person to really post a lot of my personal life, but yeah, I don't feel the need to perform. It's just like what we talked about earlier about like wearing certain masks and things of that nature. I do think that can be interpreted as performative, and I think it's necessary sometimes. But I think like at my core, I'm very content with who I am and what I'm doing. And Tupac talked about this in an interview. I'm gonna misquote it, but it was really profound. And they asked him about his acting career, and basically he was saying that he could play different roles very well because like at the end of the day he can look in the mirror and see who he is and accept that person and feel content with who he is. And so, it doesn't like he can step out of or he can step into other roles, but he still has like that foundation. And I feel similarly. I feel like, um, yeah, I'm cool with like whatever the outcomes may be in what I'm doing. I don't feel as tethered to like a destination or outcome the way I might have felt when I was like younger, or before. So yeah, I'm good. It's not that everything is good or everything is like perfect, but I'm pretty content with, I guess, the wave that I'm on right now, personally.
No, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the in-depth response, like the you willing to be able to go into it, because like it's just more than just like, I think if people were listening to that, like it's more than just I'm good. It's like, well, why? What makes it?
Mm-hmm.
What makes life good?
Yeah.
And it's well, we say that's how we respond to it. Yeah, I'm good. Right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, what is bringing that goodness? That
Mm-hmm.
maybe somebody that's listening to it could be able to be like, all right, well, interesting. He's found this perspective, or maybe I resonate with that perspective because that's how I felt lately.
Right.
So no,
And that could change.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, I haven't figured life out. You know what I'm saying? Like that could change. I mean, I've definitely had days where, I didn't feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's not, even now, like I'm not at a destination, you know what I'm saying? But as of recent and in this moment, I do feel like pretty content with where I'm at.
Mm-hmm. And maybe that's also like a way. Maybe I'll just ask you like off camera that how could I also foster an answer that to that question without asking that question. Maybe that's also could be something that I've
Of like
just asking somebody how they are and like creating that genuine that invites them to really let them know that it's a safe space to really answer that. And maybe I haven't figured that out as an interviewer, as a.
I think you did it well.
Yeah.
I think you did it well, naming that. A lot of times you get responses that are disingenuous. I think that's a good way to frame it, because that's why, like, when you first said it, I kind of laughed because I'm like, all right. I mean, that's the natural response. Is like, yeah, I'm good, and you don't really think too much beyond that. But
Mm-hmm.
um, I think pushing for a more thoughtful response is good. So I feel like that was a strong way to ask it.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate you. I
Mm.
appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on.
Likewise,
It was a
likewise.
very good conversation, as the first one is, and as this
Yeah,
one is
always,
going to
man.
be.
Always.
Yeah, I'm always making sure I'm keeping up to date and watching everything, and it's been helping me. And I know if it's helped me, it's probably helped so many other people. So
Appreciate you, man.
I want to say
Yeah.
thank you again for coming on.
Yeah,
Um,
likewise. This is a great platform, man.
Thank you,
And
man.
your conversations are definitely. I mean, as
Yeah,
they're touching a lot of people and inspiring a lot of people. So yeah, just keep it going.
thank you, brother.
Yeah.